I've been in politics for 35 years, but I have never seen anything like this. Ivanka Trump leaked evidence to federal investigators that her father shared classified intelligence with Russia deliberately in exchange for personal financial benefits, names of American intelligence assets, military secrets, information that got people killed. His own daughter is providing evidence of treason. 3 sources confirm this. The leak happened last month. Trump doesn't know it was Ivanka yet. His legal team is hiding it from him because they know his reaction will be nuclear. Let me tell you exactly what Ivanka Trump provided to federal investigators, because the details matter. The specifics are what make this so catastrophic for Trump and so legally bulletproof for prosecutors. I've spent the last 2 weeks confirming this through multiple sources. I've talked to people who've been briefed on the investigation. I've pieced together information from 3 separate channels. And what I'm about to tell you is as solid as anything I've ever reported. Ivanka didn't just give prosecutors vague allegations. She didn't just point them in a direction and let them figure it out. She gave them a roadmap to prosecuting her father for one of the most serious crimes in American law. Here's what she provided. First, documents. Actual physical evidence that Trump can't deny or explain away. There are printouts of communications between Trump and Russian oligarchs connected to Putin. These aren't social pleasantries. These are business negotiations where Trump is offering something very specific in exchange for financial support, access to classified American intelligence. One document I've been told about is a proposal, handwritten notes from a 2023 meeting where Trump lists types of intelligence Russia would find valuable, satellite imagery of Ukrainian military positions, names of CIA assets operating in Moscow, technical specifications of American weapon systems being supplied to Ukraine, details about NATO military planning. This isn't Trump being careless with classified information. This is Trump creating a menu of American secrets he's willing to sell. Second, recordings. And this is where it gets truly damning. Ivanka apparently provided recordings of conversations where Trump discusses sharing classified intelligence. Now, I don't know if Ivanka made these recordings herself or if she provided recordings that already existed. My sources won't confirm that detail. But what I'm hearing is that there are at least 3 recordings where Trump explicitly discusses giving specific classified information to Russian intermediaries. And in at least one of those recordings, Trump acknowledges that what he's doing is illegal, but says, and I'm told this is close to a direct quote, "They can't touch me, I'm untouchable." That's consciousness of guilt. That's Trump knowing he's committing a crime and doing it anyway because he believes he's above the law. Third, testimony. Ivanka's own firsthand account of what she witnessed. She was present at multiple meetings where Trump met with Russians connected to Putin's government. She saw documents being exchanged. She heard conversations about what intelligence Trump would provide and what he'd receive in return, and she's willing to testify to all of it under oath. That's the trifecta that prosecutors dream about. Documents, recordings, and eyewitness testimony. Any one of those would be significant. All 3 together, that's a case that's almost impossible to defend against. Now, let me tell you about the specific intelligence Trump allegedly shared, because this is where the national security implications become horrifying. According to sources familiar with what Ivanka told investigators, Trump provided Russia with the names of at least 7 CIA assets operating in Russia and former Soviet states. These are people, Russians, who are working with American intelligence, providing information about Putin's government and military operations. Trump gave Putin their names. Within weeks of Trump sharing this information, at least 3 of these individuals disappeared. 1 showed up dead. The others are missing and presumed imprisoned or killed. Trump got those people killed. He compromised American intelligence sources in exchange for personal financial benefit. And his daughter is providing evidence of it. He also shared details about American military capabilities in Europe, specific information about troop deployments, weapons systems, readiness levels, the kind of intelligence that would help Russia plan military operations against NATO forces or calculate what kind of resistance they'd face if they expanded the Ukraine war. And he provided intelligence about Ukraine's defense plans. Information the U.S. gathered from our own intelligence operations and from Ukrainian sources. Trump took that intelligence information that Ukrainians risked their lives to provide, and he gave it to Russia so Putin could use it to kill more Ukrainians. That's not just illegal. That's fucking evil. That's betraying both American interests and the interest of a democratic ally fighting for survival against Russian aggression. I learned a long time ago in opposition research the difference between a scandal and a career-ending catastrophe is evidence. Accusations can be denied. Allegations can be spun. But documentation, recordings, eyewitness testimony from a credible source, that's when you're done. That's when there's no defense, no spin, no way out. And Ivanka gave prosecutors all three. Now, let me tell you how Ivanka came to cooperate, because understanding her motivations is crucial to understanding why this is really happening. From what I'm hearing, federal investigators have been looking at Trump's foreign business dealings for months. They had evidence of suspicious financial transactions. They had communications that suggested improper relationships with foreign governments. But they couldn't prove the connection to classified intelligence sharing. They needed someone on the inside, someone who was present for the meetings, someone who could explain the context of documents and recordings, someone who could testify about what was really happening behind closed doors. So they approached Ivanka, and they were direct. We know you were involved in these meetings. We know you witnessed these transactions. We have evidence that you participated in some of these negotiations. You have two choices. You can refuse to cooperate, and we'll charge you as a co-conspirator. You'll face decades in federal prison. Your children will grow up with their mother in jail. Or you can tell us what happened, provide evidence, testify truthfully, and we'll give you immunity from prosecution. That's the choice prosecutors gave her. And Ivanka did the math. She's got 3 young children. She's got a marriage to Jared Kushner, who's been telling her for years to get out of Trump world. She's got a life she wants to live that doesn't involve federal prison. And she's got a father who's dragged her into criminal conduct, who's put her at legal risk, who's treated her as an accessory to his crimes rather than protecting her. So she chose herself. She chose her kids. She chose her future. And she gave prosecutors everything they needed to destroy her father. I talked to a former federal prosecutor yesterday, someone who's handled national security cases, someone who knows how these investigations work. And they told me, if what you're describing is accurate, if Ivanka really provided documentation and recordings and is willing to testify, Trump is fucked. That's an unwinnable case. That's the kind of evidence that gets people convicted even when they're not famous. Against a former president, it's devastating. Now, here's what makes this even more explosive. The investigation is still secret. The general public doesn't know about Ivanka's cooperation. Most of Trump's team doesn't know. And Trump himself definitely doesn't know. His legal team has been keeping it from him. They've been trying to figure out how to manage the situation before he finds out and does something that makes everything worse. But they're running out of time. Because investigations like this don't stay secret forever, especially not when they involve a former president and evidence of treason. Someone's going to leak. A reporter's going to piece it together. A court filing is going to reveal something. And once that happens, once the story breaks publicly, the chaos is going to be unlike anything we've seen in American politics. Trump learning that Ivanka cooperated against him. Trump's base learning that his own daughter thinks he committed treason. Trump's legal team trying to defend against evidence his daughter provided. Trump's family exploding in public recriminations. That's what's coming. That's what the next few weeks or months are going to look like. And nobody, not Trump's lawyers, not his advisors, not Republican leaders, is ready for it. Because this isn't a normal political scandal. This isn't something you can spin or deflect or wait out. This is a former president's daughter providing evidence that he betrayed America. And when that story breaks, when Americans see the documents and hear the recordings and read Ivanka's testimony, there's no coming back from it. That's what she gave prosecutors. That's what she's willing to testify to. That's the evidence that's going to end Trump's political career and potentially send him to prison. And the truly insane part? Trump has no idea it's coming. He's going about his life, giving speeches, posting on social media, thinking he's untouchable, while his daughter is cooperating with prosecutors to build a treason case against him. That's where we are. That's what's about to explode. And it's going to be the biggest political scandal in American history. Because nothing, not Watergate, not Iran-Contra, not Clinton's impeachment, nothing compares to a president's daughter providing evidence that he sold out America to Russia. That's the story. That's what Ivanka leaked. And that's why Trump is about to face the worst crisis of his life. I need to tell you about the moment Trump's legal team discovered that Ivanka was cooperating with federal prosecutors. Because that moment when they realized the president's favorite daughter had flipped, that's when they understood how catastrophically fucked Trump really is. This happened about 3 weeks ago, and I'm hearing the details from two sources who were briefed on what went down. The story is almost too crazy to believe, except I know the people involved and I know how Trump's legal operation works. Here's what happened. Trump's lead attorney, I'm not naming names because my sources requested anonymity, got a call from a contact at the Justice Department, not an official call. This was a back channel heads up from someone who's known Trump's lawyer for years. The message was simple. You need to know that we have a cooperating witness in your client's family, someone very close to him. And the evidence they're providing is catastrophic. That's all they said. They wouldn't identify who the cooperator was, wouldn't specify what evidence had been provided. Just that warning, someone in Trump's inner circle, someone in his family, was actively building a case against him. Trump's lawyer immediately thought it was Jared. That made sense. Jared's always been seen as an opportunist. Jared's been distancing himself from Trump for months. Jared would absolutely save himself if prosecutors offered a deal. So Trump's legal team started quietly investigating, trying to figure out if it was Jared, what evidence he might have provided, how to contain the damage, and then they got the discovery. The official notification from prosecutors about evidence that would be used in potential proceedings against Trump, that's when they saw Ivanka's name, listed as a cooperating witness with a summary of the evidence she'd provided, documents, recordings, testimony about classified intelligence sharing with Russian nationals. I'm told Trump's lawyer literally had to sit down when he read that, had to process what he was seeing, because this wasn't Jared. This wasn't some business associate or former staffer who could be dismissed as having an axe to grind. This was Ivanka, the daughter Trump has publicly favored his entire life, the one family member he's consistently praised and elevated, the person who's been at the center of his business operations and his political operation, and she was cooperating fully against him. One of my sources described the reaction this way. It was like watching someone realize they're standing in a building that's already collapsing. There's no way to stop it, no way to get out. You just watch it happen and know you're fucked. That's what Trump's legal team understood in that moment. This wasn't a problem they could manage. This wasn't a scandal they could contain. This was the complete destruction of any possible defense strategy. Because here's how criminal defense works. When you're representing someone as high profile as Trump, you need to control the narrative. You need to attack the credibility of witnesses. You need to create doubt about the evidence. But how do you attack Ivanka's credibility? How do you convince a jury that Trump's own daughter is lying about him? How do you create doubt when the witness is someone Trump himself has publicly vouched for hundreds of times? You can't. There's no strategy that works. You can't call her a disgruntled employee. She's his daughter. You can't say she's biased. Trump's publicly said she's the smartest, most trustworthy person in his orbit. You can't claim she doesn't understand business. Trump put her in charge of major Trump organization operations. Every defense that might work with another witness backfires spectacularly when the witness is Ivanka Trump. So Trump's lawyers had an emergency meeting. This was about 2.5 weeks ago. They gathered at their main office in New York, the lead attorney, 2 other senior lawyers on Trump's team, and a crisis management consultant who's worked with them before. And they had to figure out, what the fuck do we do now? I'm hearing from someone who was briefed on this meeting that the discussion was brutal, These are experienced lawyers. They've handled high-stakes cases. They've defended clients in impossible situations. But this? They'd never seen anything like this. One lawyer apparently argued they needed to tell Trump immediately that he had a right to know, that keeping it from him would only make things worse when he eventually found out. Another lawyer argued the opposite, said Trump's reaction would be so explosive, so uncontrollable, that he'd do something that would make the legal situation even worse. He'd attack Ivanka publicly. He'd make statements that prosecutors could use against him. He'd obstruct justice in ways that would add charges to whatever he's already facing. The crisis management consultant apparently said something like, "We need to assume Trump will react in the worst possible way. He'll attack his own daughter. He'll claim she's lying. He'll try to intimidate her. And all of that will play horribly with the jury. It'll make him look guilty and abusive. So we need to delay telling him as long as possible while we figure out damage control." That's the position they settled on. Don't tell Trump yet. Try to develop a strategy first. Try to understand the full scope of what Ivanka provided before Trump's reaction makes everything infinitely worse. But here's the problem with that plan. You can't keep something like this secret forever, especially not from someone as paranoid and demanding as Trump. Trump's already suspicious that something's wrong. He can sense when his team is hiding things from him. He's been asking questions about the investigation, about what prosecutors are doing, about whether anyone's cooperating, and his lawyers have been deflecting, giving him partial information, telling him they're handling it, assuring him there's nothing to worry about. But Trump knows when people are bullshitting him, and he's getting increasingly angry about what he perceives as his legal team not being straight with him. So his lawyers are in an impossible position. They need to tell him, but they know telling him will cause a crisis that could destroy what's left of his defense. They need to keep it secret, but they know he's going to find out, and when he does, he'll be even more furious that they hid it from him. There's no good option. Every path leads to disaster. Now, let me tell you what Trump's legal team is most afraid of. Not the evidence itself, though that's devastating enough, but Trump's reaction when he learns about Ivanka's betrayal. I've worked with people who've dealt with Trump when he feels betrayed. I've heard the stories from former staffers, former lawyers, former associates. When Trump thinks someone close to him has turned on him, his reaction is nuclear. He doesn't just attack, he obliterates. He goes scorched earth. He says things that are so extreme, so vindictive, so completely without restraint that they create new problems far worse than the original betrayal. And that's when the betrayal is from someone peripheral, a staffer, an advisor, someone who can be dismissed as never really being loyal in the first place. But Ivanka, this is different. This is his daughter. This is someone he's loved, or at least claimed to love his entire life. This is someone he's elevated, praised, defended, protected. If Trump learns Ivanka cooperated against him, his reaction won't just be anger. It'll be rage mixed with betrayal, mixed with humiliation, mixed with wounded ego. It'll be every psychological button Trump has, all pushed simultaneously. And he'll lash out publicly, immediately, without any consideration for the legal consequences. His lawyers know this. They've seen him operate. They know that when Trump feels hurt, he hurts back. And he doesn't care about collateral damage. So they're imagining Trump learning about Ivanka and immediately going on Truth Social or calling into Fox News or holding a press conference. And in his rage, he'll say things like, "Ivanka's lying. She's always been weak. She's being manipulated by Jared. She's making this up to save herself. I gave her everything, and this is how she repays me. She's dead to me." Every one of those statements creates legal problems. Witness intimidation, obstruction, statements that can be used as evidence of consciousness of guilt, but Trump won't care. In the moment, he'll just want to strike back, want to hurt Ivanka the way she hurt him, want to destroy her credibility before she can destroy him. And his lawyers can't stop him. Nobody can stop Trump when he's in that mindset. That's what they're afraid of. Not just the evidence Ivanka provided, but Trump's inevitable reaction, making everything exponentially worse. I talked to a lawyer yesterday, someone who's represented high-profile clients in criminal cases, someone who understands how these situations work, and they told me the worst client is one who can't control himself, who makes impulsive decisions based on emotion, who says things publicly that destroy their own defense. Trump is the worst case scenario of that type of client. And learning his daughter flipped on him, he's going to do something catastrophically stupid. Now, here's what Trump's legal team has been trying to do while keeping this secret from him. They've been attempting damage control, reaching out to Ivanka's lawyers, trying to understand the scope of her cooperation, trying to see if there's any way to limit the damage or undermine her credibility. But Ivanka's lawyers aren't talking. They've been clear. Ivanka has immunity. She's cooperating fully. She's committed to testifying. There's no negotiation. There's no walking this back. Trump's team has also been trying to prepare for the public revelation, working on messaging, developing a strategy for how to respond when the story breaks. But what's the message? How do you spin a president's daughter cooperating in a treason investigation? How do you explain that to Trump's base? How do you maintain that Trump's innocent when his own daughter is providing evidence against him? They don't have good answers. They've been in meeting after meeting, and they keep coming back to the same conclusion. There's no good spin. There's no message that works. This is a catastrophe that can't be managed. And meanwhile, the clock is ticking, because federal investigations don't stay secret forever, especially not ones involving former presidents and treason allegations. Reporters are already sniffing around. I'm not the only one who's heard whispers about Ivanka's cooperation. Other journalists are working their sources. Someone's going to break the story soon. And when that happens, when the news goes public before Trump's been told, his reaction is going to be even worse, because he'll feel humiliated. He'll have learned about his daughter's betrayal the same way everyone else did by reading it in the news. That'll enrage him even more than the betrayal itself, because for Trump, image is everything. And learning through media reports that his daughter thinks he's a traitor, that's the ultimate humiliation. His lawyers know this. They know they're running out of time. They know they need to tell him before the story breaks publicly. But they also know that telling him triggers a chain reaction they can't control. Trump's rage, Trump's public attacks, Trump making the legal situation worse, Trump potentially doing something that adds obstruction charges to whatever he's already facing. So they're paralyzed, caught between the need to tell him and the terror of what happens when they do. I've seen legal teams in crisis before. I've watched as lawyers try to manage unmanageable clients, but I've never seen anything quite like this. And a legal team that knows their client is facing catastrophic criminal exposure, and that the client's own reaction to learning about it will make things even worse. That's where Trump's lawyers are right now, sitting on information that will destroy their client, knowing they have to tell him, knowing his reaction will be disastrous, and hoping against hope that they can somehow navigate this without everything exploding. But it's going to explode. There's no avoiding it. The only question is when and how bad the fallout will be. Because one way or another, Trump's going to find out. Either his lawyers tell him, or he reads it in the news, or someone leaks it to him, or he figures it out himself. And when he does, when Trump learns that Ivanka, his favorite, the daughter he's praised and elevated and claimed to trust more than anyone, when he learns she's cooperating with prosecutors to send him to prison, that's when everything burns down. His lawyers know it's coming. They're preparing for it as best they can. But you can't really prepare for Trump learning his daughter betrayed him. You can only watch it happen and try to survive the blast radius. That's the crisis Trump's legal team is living through right now. That's why they're terrified. And that's why they're running out of time to figure out how to tell him before the whole thing explodes on its own. Let me tell you what's happening inside Trump's operation right now. Because while the lawyers are panicking about how to tell Trump, everyone else in his orbit is finding out about Ivanka's cooperation. And the resulting chaos is unlike anything I've ever seen in political operations. I've been in war rooms during crisis situations. I've watched campaigns implode. I've seen political organizations fracture under pressure. But this is a complete organizational meltdown in slow motion. Here's what you need to understand. Trump's operation has always run on paranoia and personal loyalty. Everyone suspects everyone else of disloyalty. Everyone's constantly jockeying for position. Everyone's trying to protect themselves while maintaining access to Trump. It's a toxic, dysfunctional environment on a good day. And this is not a good day. The news about Ivanka started spreading through Trump's inner circle about 2 weeks ago. Not officially, not through some announcement, but through whispers, through back channels, through people figuring things out and telling other people they trust, and the reaction has been absolute panic. Let me walk you through the key players and how they're responding, because each reaction tells you something about the crisis that's unfolding. Start with Don Jr., because his response is the most visceral and the most telling about what's going to happen when Trump finds out. I'm hearing from 2 sources that Don Jr. learned about Ivanka's cooperation about 10 days ago. Someone on Trump's legal team, against the lawyer's wishes, told him, probably because they knew he'd find out anyway and they wanted to control how he learned. Don Jr.'s immediate reaction? Rage. Not at Trump, but Ivanka. He's been telling people that Ivanka was always weak, that she was never really loyal to the family, that Jared corrupted her, turned her into someone who cares more about her social standing than about family loyalty. And he's been saying, multiple sources have confirmed this, that when the story goes public, he's going to destroy her. He's going to go on every media platform available and call her a traitor, a liar, someone who betrayed the family for her own benefit. I talked to someone who spoke with Don Jr. last week, and they told me he's not thinking about the legal implications. He's not thinking about how his attacks might hurt Trump's defense. He's just thinking about revenge, about making Ivanka pay for what she's done to the family. That's classic Don Jr. All emotion. No strategy, no consideration of consequences. Just immediate, visceral reaction. And that reaction is going to make everything worse when this goes public. Because Don Jr. attacking Ivanka will create a story that dominates news cycles for weeks. It'll turn this into a public family civil war that destroys any chance of controlling the narrative. But Don Jr. doesn't care. He's already decided that Ivanka is the enemy, and he's preparing for war. Now let's talk about Eric, because his reaction is different and in some ways more revealing. Eric found out around the same time as Don Jr., and unlike his brother, Eric's response wasn't rage, it was fear. Eric's always been the least political of Trump's children. He's more focused on the business side. He's less involved in the public-facing aspects of Trump world. And he's always understood that his legal exposure is significant because of his role in Trump organization operations. So when Eric learned that Ivanka was cooperating, his first thought was, am I next? Do prosecutors have evidence against me? Should I be considering my own cooperation? I'm hearing from sources that Eric has been quietly talking to his own lawyers separate from Trump's legal team about his options, about whether he should be prepared to protect himself if prosecutors come after him. He hasn't made any decisions. He hasn't approached prosecutors. But the fact that he's even considering it tells you how panicked he is and how little faith he has that Trump's legal team can protect him. That's a massive problem for Trump. Because if Eric starts thinking about saving himself, if he starts contemplating cooperation, then Trump loses another child, another potential witness, another person who could provide damaging testimony. And if both Ivanka and Eric cooperate, then Don Jr. is the only child left standing with Trump. That's not a sustainable position for Trump's operation or his legal defense. Melania's reaction is harder to read because she's always been more private, more strategic about what she says and who she says it to. But I'm hearing from sources close to the Trump family that Melania is furious. Not at Ivanka specifically, at the entire situation. At the fact that Trump's behavior has put the family in legal jeopardy, at the reality that her stepchildren are facing potential criminal charges because of Trump's actions. And she's apparently been telling people that she warned Trump years ago that his reckless behavior would eventually destroy the family, that she told him to be more careful, to think about consequences, to consider his children's futures. Now those warnings have come true. And Melania's reaction is basically, I told you so. You did this to yourself. You did this to your children. And now we're all paying the price. I don't know if Melania will leave Trump over this. Marriage to Trump comes with significant financial benefits that she's not likely to give up easily. But I'm hearing that she's distancing herself, that she's making it clear to people in their orbit that she's not going down with the ship if Trump's legal situation gets worse. That's devastating for Trump in its own way, because Trump's public image has always included the facade of family unity, the image of a successful man with a beautiful wife and accomplished children, all of them loyal, all of them supportive. If that facade cracks, if Melania distances herself, if Ivanka's cooperation becomes public, if Eric starts protecting himself, if Don Jr. is attacking Ivanka, then Trump's image as a family man collapses, and with it, part of his political brand. Now, let me tell you about the non-family members in Trump's inner circle. The advisors, the political operatives, the people whose careers are tied to Trump's success. They're in absolute panic because they understand what Ivanka's cooperation means for Trump's political future, and by extension, for their own futures. I talked to someone who's been advising Trump on political strategy, someone who's been with him for years, someone whose entire career is built around Trump world, and they told me we're fucked. There's no spinning a president's daughter cooperating in a treason investigation. There's no message that works. The base might stick with him through anything else. But this is different. This makes him look guilty in a way that accusations never did. That advisor has been quietly reaching out to other potential clients, trying to position themselves for a post-Trump career, trying to get out before the ship sinks completely, and they're not alone. Multiple people in Trump's orbit have been making similar calculations, updating their resumes, reaching out to old contacts, preparing for the possibility that Trump's political career ends, and they need to find their next opportunity. That's the beginning of the end for any political operation. When the people around the candidate start preparing their exit strategies, it means they've already written off the candidate's chances. Trump doesn't know this yet. He doesn't know that his own team is preparing to abandon him, but he will. And when he realizes that the people he's trusted are already planning their departures, it'll feed his paranoia and make him even more unstable. Now, here's where things get really messy. The infighting and blame game that's already started. Different factions within Trump world are blaming each other for how this happened. The legal team is blaming the political advisors for not seeing it coming. The political advisors are blaming the legal team for not protecting the family. The family members are blaming each other for various failures and betrayals. It's a circular firing squad. Everyone's attacking everyone else. Nobody's taking responsibility. Nobody's trying to actually solve the problem. I've seen this pattern in failing campaigns and collapsing political operations. When people know they're going down, they stop trying to save the operation and start trying to save themselves. And that means deflecting blame, creating distance, making sure that when everything falls apart, they're not the ones who get blamed for the failure. That's where Trump world is right now. The operation is collapsing, and everyone's fighting to make sure they're not the last one standing when it finally dies. Let me tell you about one particularly revealing incident that happened last week. This was told to me by someone who was present, someone I've known for years and trust completely. There was a meeting at Mar-a-Lago. About a dozen people, lawyers, advisors, some family members. Trump wasn't there. This was a meeting about Trump, not with him. The purpose was supposedly to coordinate messaging and strategy, to figure out how to handle the various legal and political crises Trump is facing. But according to my source, The meeting devolved into accusations and recriminations within about 15 minutes. People yelling at each other, blame being thrown around, old grievances being aired. At one point, Don Jr. apparently stood up and started screaming about Ivanka, saying she'd always been disloyal, saying this proved she'd never really been part of the family, saying he'd known she'd betray them eventually. And Eric apparently started crying, just broke down, said he didn't know what to do, said he was scared of going to prison, said he wished they'd never gotten involved in politics in the first place. And the lawyers and advisors just sat there, watching this family completely fall apart, realizing there was nothing they could do to stop it. My source said the meeting ended without any decisions being made, without any strategy being developed. It just dissolved into chaos, and everyone left feeling more hopeless than when they arrived. That's what's happening inside Trump's operation. That's the level of dysfunction and panic. And Trump doesn't even know the full extent of it yet. Now, here's what's making all of this worse. The leaks. Information is flowing out of Trump world at an unprecedented rate. People are talking to reporters, to law enforcement, to anyone who'll listen. Everyone's trying to position themselves favorably for whatever comes next. And Trump's team can't stop it. They can't identify who's leaking because everyone's leaking. They can't threaten consequences because the consequences people fear most criminal prosecution are coming from outside, not from Trump. So information that should be tightly held is spreading. Details about Ivanka's cooperation that should be secret are becoming known. Strategy discussions that should be confidential are being reported in the media. It's a complete loss of operational security, and it's making Trump's legal situation worse because prosecutors are learning about Trump's strategy in real time. They're hearing about how Trump's team is planning to respond. They're getting intelligence from inside Trump's operation that helps them build their case. I've never seen anything like this. I've seen leaky operations before, but this is different. This is an operation where everyone has given up on loyalty and is just trying to survive. And the tragedy, if you can call it that, is that Trump still doesn't know how bad it is. He knows things are difficult. He knows there are legal problems. He knows the investigation is serious, but he doesn't know that his own team has essentially given up on him, that his children are divided and panicking, that his advisors are preparing to abandon him, that his operation is collapsing from the inside. And he doesn't know that Ivanka cooperated against him, that his favorite child provided prosecutors with evidence of treason. When he finds that out, when he learns the full extent of how fucked he really is, his reaction is going to accelerate this collapse because he'll lash out. He'll attack everyone around him. He'll accuse them all of disloyalty, and he'll drive away whatever support he has left. That's what's coming. That's the meltdown that's already in progress, and that's going to get exponentially worse. I talked to a Republican strategist yesterday, someone who used to work with Trump, someone who's kept in touch with people in his orbit, and they told me the operation is already dead. It's just that Trump doesn't know it yet. The moment he finds out about Ivanka, it's over. There's no recovery. There's no rebuilding. It's just the end. That's the reality inside Trump world right now. An organization in its death throes. People scrambling to save themselves. A family tearing itself apart. And a former president who's about to learn that his own daughter thinks he should go to prison for treason. The inner circle is melting down. And when Trump finds out why, the meltdown is going to become an explosion that destroys everything. That's where we are. That's what's happening behind closed doors. And it's only going to get worse from here. I need to tell you about Jared Kushner's role in all of this. Because what I'm hearing from multiple sources is that Ivanka didn't decide to cooperate with prosecutors on her own. Jared pushed her into it, orchestrated it, made it happen. And his motivations weren't about justice or doing the right thing. They were about saving himself and protecting his own future, even if it meant destroying his father-in-law. Let me walk you through what actually happened, because the timeline and the details matter. This goes back about 4 months. Late summer, early fall. Federal prosecutors had been investigating Trump's foreign business dealings and his handling of classified information. They had some evidence, financial records, communications intelligence reports, but they needed someone on the inside who could explain what it all meant. They started looking at people in Trump's inner circle who might be vulnerable to pressure, people who participated in questionable activities but might be willing to cooperate to save themselves. And they identified Ivanka and Jared as prime targets. Both were involved in Trump's business operations. Both had access to sensitive information. Both participated in meetings with foreign nationals. Both potentially faced serious criminal exposure. So prosecutors approached Jared first. Not directly, through intermediaries, through lawyers who let Jared's legal team know, we're building a case, your client is implicated, but there might be a way out if he's willing to talk. Jared's response: he wanted to know what kind of deal was on the table. I'm hearing from sources familiar with these discussions that prosecutors were clear. Full cooperation in exchange for immunity. Tell us everything you know about Trump's activities, provide documentation, testify if necessary, and we'll protect you from prosecution. But here's the problem Jared faced. He didn't know enough. He was involved in some things, but he wasn't in every meeting. He didn't have access to all the documents. His testimony alone wouldn't be enough to build the kind of case prosecutors wanted. Ivanka, on the other hand, knew everything. She was Trump's right hand in business operations. She was present at critical meetings. She had access to documents and communications that Jared didn't. She was the one prosecutors really wanted. So Jared made a calculation, a cold, strategic calculation that tells you everything you need to know about who Jared Kushner really is. He decided to convince Ivanka to cooperate with prosecutors, to provide the evidence they needed to testify against her own father. Because if Ivanka cooperated, prosecutors would give both of them immunity. Both of them would be protected. Both of them would walk away from this without criminal charges. And that's exactly what Jared did. I'm hearing from two sources close to the Kushner family that Jared spent months working on Ivanka, convincing her that cooperation was the only option, that Trump had put them both in legal jeopardy through his reckless behavior, that they had to protect their children, their future, their freedom. One source described it this way: Jared was relentless. Every day he'd bring it up. He'd show her news articles about people who went to prison for far less than what they'd been involved in. He'd talk about their kids growing up without parents. He'd paint this picture of their life destroyed because of Trump's crimes. And slowly, he wore her down. That's manipulation. That's a husband systematically breaking down his wife's resistance to betray her father. And it worked. But Jared wasn't just motivated by fear of prosecution. He had bigger ambitions. And this is where the story gets even more calculating. Jared has been trying to rebuild his reputation and his business for years. The Trump Association damaged him in elite circles. His real estate deals struggled. His relationships with foreign investors became complicated. His ability to operate in high finance was compromised. And Jared wants back in. He wants to be taken seriously again in business and finance. He wants to restore the Kushner family name. He wants to be seen as a legitimate businessman rather than Trump's corrupt son-in-law. Cooperating with federal prosecutors in a national security investigation, that's a way to rehabilitate his image. That's a way to position himself as someone who did the right thing when it mattered. That's a way to distance himself from Trump and rebrand as a respectable figure. I talked to someone who knows Jared well, someone who's done business with him, someone who understands how he thinks, and they told me Jared's always been an opportunist. He'll align himself with whoever benefits him most. When Trump was useful, he was all in on Trump. Now, Trump's a liability, so Jared's cutting him loose and positioning himself for the next chapter. It's completely transactional. There's no loyalty, just calculation. That's who Jared Kushner is. And that's what he's done to Trump. Now, let me tell you how Jared specifically convinced Ivanka to cooperate, because the tactics are revealing. First, he weaponized her fear. Jared brought in lawyers who explained in graphic detail what federal prison would be like for someone like Ivanka. The isolation, the loss of her children, the destruction of her life. He made her terrified of what would happen if she didn't cooperate. Second, he appealed to her maternal instincts. Their three kids, Arabella, Joseph, Theodore, Jared kept talking about how they needed their mother, how they couldn't grow up with both parents in prison, how cooperation was the only way to ensure the kids had a normal life. Third, he reframed the moral question. Instead of, "Are you going to betray your father?" Jared positioned it as, "Are you going to let your father's crimes destroy your children's lives?" He made cooperation seem like the responsible, maternal choice rather than an act of betrayal. And fourth, he isolated her from dissenting voices. Jared made sure Ivanka wasn't talking to Don Jr. or Eric or anyone else who might convince her not to cooperate. He controlled her information environment. He surrounded her with people who reinforced his message: cooperation is the only option. That's sophisticated manipulation. That's someone who understands psychological pressure and how to break down resistance systematically. And it worked. Ivanka agreed to cooperate. She met with prosecutors. She provided documents. She gave testimony. She committed to testifying at trial, if necessary, all because Jared convinced her it was the only way to protect herself and their children. Now, here's what Jared's been doing since Ivanka agreed to cooperate, because his strategy goes beyond just avoiding prosecution. Jared's been quietly reaching out to business contacts, letting people know very carefully, very discreetly, that he and Ivanka are distancing themselves from Trump, that they're cooperating with federal authorities, that they're on the right side of this. He's been rebuilding relationships that were damaged by the Trump Association, reconnecting with people in finance, in real estate, in business circles who wouldn't touch him while he was seen as Trump's guy. And he's been positioning himself for post-Trump opportunities, exploring investments, discussing business ventures, planning for a future where he's no longer defined by his relationship to Donald Trump. I talked to someone who had a conversation with Jared about 2 weeks ago, and they said Jared was remarkably calm, not panicked like everyone else in Trump world, not stressed about the investigation, just focused on the future. Jared apparently said something like, "This is all going to be behind us soon. We did what we had to do to protect our family, and now we can move forward." That's not someone wrestling with guilt over betraying family. That's someone who's made a calculated decision and is comfortable with it. And here's the thing that really tells you who Jared is. He hasn't told Trump what he did. He hasn't confessed that he pushed Ivanka to cooperate. He's been around Trump in meetings, in social settings, acting like everything's normal, while knowing he orchestrated Trump's daughter providing evidence for a treason prosecution. That takes a special kind of sociopathy, the ability to sit across from someone you've betrayed and act like nothing's wrong, to maintain the facade while knowing you've destroyed them. But Jared can do it. Because for Jared, this isn't personal. It's business. It's strategy. It's doing what's necessary to protect himself and advance his interests. Trump is just an obstacle to overcome, a problem to solve, not family to be loyal to. Now, let me tell you what's going to happen when Trump finds out about Jared's role, because this is important for understanding the coming explosion. When Trump learns that Ivanka cooperated, his initial rage will be directed at her, at his daughter, who he thinks betrayed him. But when he learns that Jared pushed her into it, when he understands that this was Jared's orchestration, Trump's rage is going to reach a whole new level. Because Trump has never really trusted Jared. He's tolerated him because Ivanka wanted to marry him. He's worked with him because Jared was useful. But Trump's always seen Jared as an outsider, as someone not really part of the family. And now Trump's worst suspicions about Jared will be confirmed. Jared isn't loyal. Jared was using the Trump Association for his own benefit. And the moment Trump became a liability, Jared threw him away and took Trump's daughter with him. That's going to feel worse to Trump than Ivanka's cooperation itself. Because Ivanka's betrayal could maybe be explained. She was scared. Prosecutors pressured her. She made a mistake. Trump could potentially forgive that. But Jared's orchestration, that's deliberate. That's calculated. That's someone who destroyed Trump on purpose to advance his own interests. Trump won't forgive that. He'll want revenge. He'll want to destroy Jared the way Jared destroyed him. I'm hearing from sources that when Trump's team eventually tells him about the cooperation, they're planning to initially withhold Jared's role, tell him about Ivanka, but not about how Jared pushed her into it, because they're terrified of how Trump will react to that information. But Trump's going to find out, someone will tell him, or he'll figure it out himself. And when he does, his reaction is going to be nuclear. I learned a long time ago that there's a special kind of rage reserved for the betrayal by someone you never fully trusted in the first place. It's the rage of, I knew it, I always knew he was a snake, and now he's proven me right. That's what Trump's going to feel about Jared. And it's going to make his reaction even more destructive. Now, here's the irony that would be funny if it wasn't so tragic. Jared's strategy might backfire spectacularly. Jared thinks he can distance himself from Trump, cooperate with prosecutors, and rebuild his reputation as a legitimate businessman. He thinks he can escape the Trump association and move on to the next chapter of his life. But when this becomes public, when everyone knows that Jared convinced his wife to testify against her father in a treason investigation, how do you think that's going to play? Business partners don't want to work with someone who betrays family. Investors don't trust someone who turns on his father-in-law to save himself. Even people who hate Trump are going to look at Jared's behavior and think, if he'd do that to Trump, what would he do to me? So Jared might avoid criminal prosecution. He might also destroy his reputation even more thoroughly than if he'd just stayed loyal and taken his chances. That's the gamble Jared made. And we won't know for years whether it pays off or blows up in his face. What we do know is this: Jared Kushner orchestrated his wife's cooperation against her father to protect himself. He manipulated Ivanka into betraying Trump. He's been planning his post-Trump future while pretending to still be part of Trump world. And when Trump finds out, when he learns what Jared did, the explosion is going to destroy whatever remains of the Trump family and the Trump political operation. That's Jared's gambit. Cold, calculated, completely without loyalty or principle. And it's about to trigger the biggest family implosion in American political history. I need to tell you what's happening on Capitol Hill right now. Because while Trump's inner circle melts down and his lawyers panic about telling him Republican leaders in Congress are having their own crisis, and what they're saying privately is completely different from what they're saying publicly. I've been a Republican my entire adult life. I've worked with these people. I know how they operate. I know what they say in public versus what they say when the cameras are off and the donors aren't listening. And what I'm hearing from Republican leaders about Ivanka's cooperation is pure panic mixed with calculations about how to save themselves when this explodes. Let me start with what's happening in the Senate, because that's where the crisis is most acute. There are currently about 15 Republican senators who know about Ivanka's cooperation. Not because they've been officially briefed, the investigation is still technically secret, but because information leaks, because senators talk to Justice Department officials, because people in intelligence community share things with people on oversight committees. So a significant portion of Senate Republican leadership knows, and they're having quiet conversations about what it means and how to respond. And so I talked to someone who was in one of these conversations last week, a meeting of senior Republican senators in a private office. No staff, no records, just senators trying to figure out what the fuck to do. According to my source, the conversation was remarkable for its candor. These weren't the usual talking points about defending Trump or standing with the president. These were experienced politicians admitting they're facing a crisis they don't know how to handle. One senator apparently said something like, if Trump's own daughter is cooperating in a treason investigation, we can't defend this. We just can't. There's no spin that works. There's no message that holds our base together. Another senator reportedly argued, we need to start creating distance now before this goes public. Because when it does, we don't want to be seen as having defended him through this. We need to be able to say, we didn't know, we're shocked, we support the rule of law. And a third senator, this one really tells you where their heads are, said, the question isn't whether Trump's finished. He is. The question is whether he takes the whole party down with him. And We need to make sure we're not standing too close when he falls. That's Republican leadership. Not defending Trump, not standing by him, just trying to figure out how to survive his collapse without getting destroyed themselves. That tells you everything about where this is heading. Trump's own party has already written him off. They're just waiting for the right moment to make it public. Now, let me tell you about specific senators and how they're positioning themselves, because individual responses reveal the fault lines in the Republican Party. Mitch McConnell knows about Ivanka's cooperation. He's been briefed by contacts in the Justice Department. And according to sources, McConnell's response has been typically calculating. He's not defending Trump. He's not attacking Trump. He's just staying quiet and preparing for what comes next. McConnell has never really liked Trump. He tolerated Trump because Trump was useful, appointing conservative judges, signing tax cuts, advancing Republican priorities. But McConnell has no personal loyalty to Trump, and he's always been focused on institutional power rather than individual politicians. So McConnell's approach now is apparently let the investigation play out. Don't defend Trump in ways that create future political liability, and prepare the Senate to handle whatever constitutional crisis emerges. I'm hearing McConnell has been quietly talking to other senators about what happens if Trump is indicted, about whether the party should call for him to withdraw from politics, about how to manage the fallout in a way that preserves Republican electoral chances. That's not the behavior of someone who thinks Trump is innocent or defendable. That's someone preparing for Trump's fall and making sure he doesn't get buried in the rubble. Then there's someone like Lindsey Graham. And his response is more complicated because Graham's tied his entire political identity to Trump loyalty. Graham apparently found out about Ivanka's cooperation about a week ago. And according to sources, he had what can only be described as a breakdown, because Graham understands what this means for him personally. He's defended Trump through everything: the Access Hollywood tape, Charlottesville, 2 impeachments, January 6th, the classified documents. He's burned every bridge, destroyed every relationship, alienated every former ally to maintain Trump loyalty, and now Trump's own daughter is providing evidence of treason, which means Graham defended a traitor, which means Graham's entire political strategy for the past 8 years was built on loyalty to someone who betrayed America. How does Graham recover from that? How does he explain to South Carolina voters that he was Trump's most loyal defender when Trump was selling secrets to Russia? He can't. His political career is over when this goes public. I'm hearing Graham has been making desperate calls to people in Trump's orbit, trying to figure out if there's any way the story isn't as bad as it seems, trying to find an explanation that lets him continue defending Trump without looking completely insane. But there's no explanation that works. And Graham's running out of time to pivot before the story breaks, and he's left defending the indefensible. Senator Marco Rubio is taking yet another approach, and it's probably the smartest politically, even if it's morally bankrupt. Rubio apparently learned about the investigation and has simply gone quiet on Trump. Not defending him, not attacking him, just not talking about him at all. Rubio's bet is that he can stay neutral enough that when Trump falls, Rubio can position himself as someone who wasn't complicit, someone who had concerns all along, but respected the investigative process, someone ready to lead the party in a post-Trump era. It's cynical political positioning, but it might work because Rubio's creating plausible deniability for himself while maintaining optionality about which direction to move when the crisis breaks. Now, let me tell you about what's happening in the House, because that's where things are even more chaotic. House Republicans are more dependent on Trump's base than Senate Republicans. Their districts are more pro-Trump. Their primaries are more vulnerable to Trump-aligned challengers. So they have less room to distance themselves, but they're also hearing the same information. They're learning about Ivanka's cooperation. I talked to a House Republican yesterday, someone who's been in Congress for multiple terms, someone who's tried to balance Trump loyalty with governing responsibilities, and they were remarkably candid about the impossible position they're in. They said, "My district loves Trump. I can't attack him without getting primaried. But if I defend him through a treason scandal where his own daughter is testifying against him, I look like a fool or a traitor myself. There's no good option. I'm fucked either way. That's where dozens of House Republicans are right now, trapped between a base that demands Trump loyalty and a reality that makes Trump loyalty politically suicidal. Some of them are trying to thread the needle, saying things like, I support the rule of law and let's let the investigation proceed without actually defending or attacking Trump. But that won't work when the story breaks, because voters are going to demand a clear position. Are you with Trump or against him? Do you believe his daughter or not? And vague statements about process aren't going to satisfy anyone. The House Freedom Caucus, the most pro-Trump faction, is in complete disarray. Some members are preparing to defend Trump no matter what. Others are quietly backing away, and they're starting to turn on each other over the right strategy. I'm hearing about screaming matches in private meetings, about members accusing each other of disloyalty or stupidity, about the caucus fracturing along lines of who's willing to go down with Trump and who wants to survive. That's the kind of internal division that destroys political coalitions. And it's happening before the story has even gone public. Now, let me tell you about what Republican donors are doing, because their responses may be most telling about where this is heading. Big Republican donors have been pulling back from Trump for months. Not publicly, they can't afford to alienate Trump's base, but privately, quietly, they've been redirecting money to other candidates and causes. And now that they're hearing about Ivanka's cooperation, that trickle of money away from Trump is becoming a flood. I talked to a major Republican donor yesterday, someone who's given millions to Republican candidates over decades, someone who's been involved in party politics at the highest levels. And they told me, we can't be associated with this. We just can't. When this becomes public, when everyone knows Trump's daughter thinks he committed treason, anyone who supported him looks complicit. Our businesses suffer. Our reputations suffer. Our ability to operate in polite society suffers. So we're out. We're done with Trump. And we're making it clear to candidates, distance yourself from him or you don't get our money. That's a death sentence for Trump's political operation, because modern politics runs on money. And if major donors are cutting him off, if they're making support for Trump a disqualifying factor for candidates they fund, then Trump loses his ability to control the Republican Party. Candidates who might have defended Trump out of fear of his base will now fear losing donor support more. The calculation shifts, and Trump's power evaporates. Some donors are going even further. They're quietly funding opposition research on Trump, preparing to help candidates who run against him in primaries, building infrastructure to support a post-Trump Republican Party. This isn't some coordinated conspiracy. It's individual donors making independent decisions that all point in the same direction. Get Trump out of Republican politics as quickly as possible. Now, here's what's really remarkable. Some Republican leaders are already planning for how to message Trump's fall when it becomes public. I'm hearing about strategy sessions, about focus groups, testing different messages, about preparations for how to explain to Republican voters that Trump betrayed America without losing those voters entirely. The current plan seems to be something like, we were loyal to the office and to Republican principles, but when confronted with evidence of treason provided by his own daughter, we had to put country over party. We're shocked and disappointed, but we support the rule of law. It's a message designed to distance Republicans from Trump while not completely repudiating Trump voters. Whether it works is another question, but the fact that they're already preparing it tells you they've accepted that Trump is finished. I've been through enough political crises to recognize when a party has given up on a leader, and that's where Senate Republicans, most House Republicans, and the donor class already are. They're not defending Trump. They're just managing their own survival. The only Republicans still truly loyal to Trump are the ones who've built their entire brands on Trump loyalty. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, a handful of others who have nowhere else to go politically. But even some of them are starting to hedge, starting to create distance, starting to prepare for a post-Trump world because they can read polls. They can see that when this story breaks, Trump's support is going to collapse, and they don't want to be the last ones defending him when he falls. I learned something important back in the early 2000s when I was working on campaigns. Political loyalty is always conditional. People stick with winners. They abandon losers, and they do it faster than you'd ever imagine possible. Right now, Republican leaders are making the calculation that Trump is a loser, that his political career is over, that defending him will only destroy their own careers. So they're preparing to jump ship, some quietly, some not so quietly, but all of them moving in the same direction away from Trump. And when the story about Ivanka's cooperation goes public, when it becomes undeniable that Trump is facing a treason prosecution with his own daughter as the key witness, that trickle of Republicans abandoning him will become a stampede. Party leaders will call for him to withdraw from politics. Senators will demand he face consequences. House members will compete to denounce him most forcefully. Donors will fund anyone who runs against him. The party that defended Trump through everything will turn on him completely. And they'll do it fast, ruthlessly, and without remorse. Because that's how politics works. You defend people when it's beneficial. You abandon them when they become toxic. And you do it in ways that maximize your own survival. That's what Republican leaders are preparing for right now. Not how to defend Trump, but how to survive his fall. And when Trump finds out, when he learns that not only has Ivanka betrayed him, but his own party has already written him off. His rage is going to be directed not just at his daughter, but at every Republican who's abandoned him. He'll attack them. He'll call them traitors. He'll try to destroy their careers the way they're preparing to destroy his. And the Republican Party will fracture in ways that take a generation to repair. That's what's coming. That's what Republican leaders know is coming. And that's why they're panicking behind closed doors while maintaining calm faces in public. Because the storm is coming and nobody's ready for how bad it's going to be.